Hi, I'm Tom from the Self-Publishing Formula, and in this video I asked the question, why is it so hard to adapt a book? So I went to the Design Museum in London the other day, not because I have a particular interest in design, though it was very interesting, but because there was a brilliant Stanley Kubrick exhibition on. And my dad's a huge fan, so we went for his birthday, and I must say that although I think he's a phenomenal director, I have to admit that I haven't actually seen that many of his films. I've seen 3. I've seen The Shining, because I'm a massive Stephen King fan. I've seen A Clockwork Orange, and I've seen Full Metal Jacket. So it wasn't until I went to this exhibition that I realised that all but one of Stanley Kubrick's films are actually book adaptations. Even 2001: A Space Odyssey, which I'm guilty have not seen, was the screenplay for that was written at the same time as Arthur C. Clarke's novel, who worked alongside Kubrick in the film. And that got me thinking, how come Stanley Kubrick, considered one of the greatest directors to have ever lived, could adapt books so well when most other book-to-movie or book-to-TV adaptations are so maligned by the people who loved the source material? Sure, you could say that his take on The Shining isn't a brilliant adaptation. It's brilliant, and it's an adaptation, but it's not actually a brilliant conversion from book to film. Stephen King hated it because of how much it deviated from his novel. But I think that's what makes The Shining work when other loose adaptations don't. Kubrick knew what the theme and the tone and the real heart of the story was, and he ran with that even if the narrative changed. Amazon Studios, on the other hand, seem to have a problem with this. At least in my opinion, they often take stories from books that they think are brilliant and then they try to make it into a TV show that therefore bloats it and loses the magic which made the book so great. Take The Man in the High Castle, for example. Now that's a brilliant and somewhat experimental novel, and it's also very slim, yet Amazon decided that they needed to bloat it out for at least 3 seasons, and that's far too long. It also takes what is a sort of metaphorical or even theoretical alternate history and then fully goes into the multiverse idea, which loses the nuance of the original story. And the same can be said of their adaptation of Neil Gaiman's American Gods, and sure, the book is fairly chunky, but guess why people enjoyed the story? The story. If you change the story, then you've lost what made the original book great. And sure, it has some great themes, but are they necessarily strong enough to carry the show for 3 seasons? All that being said, everyone I've spoken to who hasn't read the original novel seems to really enjoy them, so maybe my view is skewed. I am enjoying their adaptation of Good Omens after all. That's a Terry Pratchett and Neil Gaiman book that I haven't actually read. Maybe that's the BBC helping to rein Amazon Studios in, or maybe it's the fact that Neil Gaiman works as a showrunner on the show, meaning that the guy who originally told the story is still telling the story. But perhaps the problem arises because of the differences between the 2 mediums. Books are longer than films, and therefore carry more detail and longer storylines, more of them. These inevitably have to be cut from the movie to avoid making it a bloated mess. Think of the way that the Hogwarts house elf storyline was cut from the Harry Potter films. The different mediums allow for different paces. With a book, you want to be drawn into the detail of the world, whereas in a film, they can literally show you. Equally, children's books made into children's films often have to have a lot of extra padding because the original book simply isn't long enough. And even if you do manage to capture what made the original book so great in the first place, whether that's as the essence of the theme or the original story, which is something that video game to movie adaptations fail to do so regularly, you still run the risk of disappointing fans. That's because a book is essentially a conversation between a writer and a reader. The reader puts almost as much effort into the imagination as the writer does. They fill in the blanks and colour in the white spaces. Everyone ends up with their own unique take on the story, no matter how detailed the writer's vision might be. Films, on the other hand, require little or no imagination from the viewer. It's the director's world that we're viewing, and the viewer has very little to contribute to it, apart from what they take away. And so unless it's really, really good, the film won't match the world that the reader had in their head. With all that in mind, maybe it's no wonder that it took one of the greatest filmmakers who's ever lived to get book-to-movie adaptations so consistently right. So those were my thoughts on why book-to-movie adaptations are so hard to get right. Make sure to subscribe by pressing the button below if you liked the video, and leave a comment telling me which book-to-movie adaptations you've particularly enjoyed. See you next time.